The smell of burned circuits filled the air as Sam Williams crawled deeper into the maintenance tunnel. His knees scraped against the metal grating while sparks showered down from overhead pipes. Another day, another broken system on Harmony's rest station. The massive trading post drifted through space like a metal city, home to dozens of alien species who somehow managed to live together without killing each other. Most days anyway. Sam pulled his toolkit closer and squinted at the damaged power relay. The Zephyrian traders had tried to install their own equipment again, ignoring the fact that their voltage requirements could fry human electronics. Now half the lower district was without lights, and somehow it became his problem to fix. Not that he minded much. Fixing things was what he did best. The tunnel echoed with distant sounds of the station's daily life. Market vendors shouting in a dozen languages, cargo haulers rumbling past, and the ever-present hum of life support systems keeping everyone alive in the cold vacuum of space. Sam had been living on stations like this for years now, moving from one repair job to another. It was not glamorous work, but it paid enough to keep him fed and gave him a place to sleep. He was connecting the final power coupling when he heard something strange. A soft whimpering sound like a hurt animal. Sam paused, listening carefully. The sound came again, definitely coming from somewhere nearby. He packed up his tools and followed the noise deeper into the maintenance area. Behind a stack of old shipping containers, Sam found the source of the crying. A small dragon sat curled up against the wall, no bigger than a house cat. Its scales shifted between blue and silver as it moved, and tears rolled down its pointed snout. The little creature held something in its claws, the broken pieces of what looked like a toy spaceship. Sam had heard stories about dragons before. The Draknari Empire controlled huge parts of the galaxy, and their dragon rulers were supposed to be incredibly powerful and dangerous. But this one was just a baby. Alone and upset about its broken toy, it looked up at Sam with golden eyes full of sadness. Moving slowly so he would not scare it, Sam knelt down a few feet away. The dragon hatchling did not run. Instead, it held out the broken toy toward him, making small chirping sounds. The toy had been beautiful once. A miniature starship with delicate wings and tiny engines. Now it lay in pieces, its wings snapped off and its body cracked open. Sam looked at the little dragon, then at the broken toy. He had no idea how a dragon baby had ended up alone in the maintenance tunnels of a trading station. Maybe it had wandered away from its family, or maybe it was lost. Either way, it needed help, and Sam could not just walk away from a crying child even if that child happened to be a dragon. He held out his hand carefully. The hatchling looked at his palm for a moment, then gently placed the broken pieces of its toy there. The metal felt warm, almost alive, and strange patterns glowed faintly under the surface. This was definitely not human technology. The materials were unlike anything Sam had worked with before, but the basic structure made sense. It was still just a machine, even if it was far more advanced than anything humans could build. Sam spread the pieces out on the floor between them and pulled out his toolkit. The dragon watched with intense curiosity as he examined each broken part. The toy's power source was a tiny crystal that still hummed with energy. The control circuits were made of some kind of living metal that seemed to repair itself even as he watched. The whole thing was a masterpiece of engineering, probably worth more than Sam made in a year. But to the little dragon, it was just a toy. A beloved possession that brought joy and comfort. And right now it was broken. Sam started with the main body, carefully fitting the cracked pieces back together. The living metal helped, flowing to fill the gaps and strengthen the joints. The dragon made excited chirping sounds as it watched the toy slowly take shape again. When Sam looked up, he saw the little creature had moved closer, its golden eyes fixed on his hands as they worked. Working on alien technology was always tricky. Different species had different ways of thinking about how machines should work. Human designs focused on efficiency and reliability. Draknari technology seemed to blend engineering with art, creating devices that were both functional and beautiful. The toy spaceship was covered in intricate patterns that served no practical purpose, but made it lovely to look at. Sam carefully reattached the toy's wings, using thin wire from his kit to replace the broken connectors. The original design was far more elegant, but his repair should hold. The hard part was the power system. The toy's crystal core was connected to dozens of tiny circuits that controlled everything from propulsion to lighting effects. One wrong connection could destroy the whole thing. The dragon hatchling had stopped crying and was now making soft cooing sounds as it watched Sam work. Occasionally, it would point at a particular piece with one tiny claw, as if trying to help. Sam found himself talking to the little creature as he worked, explaining what he was doing even though he doubted it understood. Hours passed without Sam noticing. The station's day cycle dimmed the lighting in the maintenance areas, but he kept working by the glow of his portable lamp. The dragon curled up next to him, sometimes dozing but always waking up when Sam moved to a new part of the repair. Finally, Sam connected the last circuit and activated the toy's power core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the little spaceship began to glow, its patterns lighting up in sequence. The wings unfolded smoothly and the tiny engines hummed to life. The toy rose gracefully into the air, floating in perfect balance. The dragon hatchling squealed with delight, clapping its small claws together. The toy responded to the sound, performing a loop in the air before landing gently in the dragon's outstretched arms. The little creature hugged its repaired toy tightly, then looked up at Sam with an expression of pure gratitude. Sam smiled and started packing up his tools. It felt good to fix something that brought such obvious joy. As he prepared to leave, the dragon made a series of chirping sounds that almost sounded like words. Sam did not understand the language, but the meaning was clear enough. "Thank you." He gave the little dragon a gentle pat on the head, careful not to disturb its delicate scales, then made his way back through the maintenance tunnels. Behind him, he could hear the soft hum of the toy spaceship and the happy sounds of a child at play. It had been a good day's work. Sam never noticed the large shadow that had been watching from the far end of the corridor, or the pair of ancient eyes that had observed every moment of the repair with growing fascination. Sam's hands moved with careful precision as he examined the broken toy under his portable work light. The dragon hatchling sat quietly beside him, occasionally making soft sounds that seemed almost like questions. Every few minutes, the little creature would point at a specific part with one tiny claw, as if trying to help with the repair process. The toy was far more complex than Sam had first realized. What looked like simple decorative patterns on the surface were actually functional circuits made from materials he could not identify. The metal seemed to shift and flow even while remaining solid, and tiny crystals embedded throughout the structure pulsed with their own inner light. This was technology centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. Sam picked up the toy's main power core, a crystal no bigger than a marble that hummed with barely contained energy. The sound it made was almost musical, like a distant song played on instruments he had never heard. When he held it up to the light, patterns swirled inside its depths like tiny galaxies spinning in perfect harmony. The dragon watched intently as Sam traced the power pathways with his finger. The circuits were damaged in several places where the toy had been dropped, but the breaks were clean. With the right approach, they could be repaired. The challenge was figuring out how to bridge the gaps using human technology. Sam had learned long ago that every machine wanted to work properly. It did not matter if it was a simple engine or advanced alien technology. The basic principles remained the same. Energy needed to flow from one point to another, controls needed to respond to input, and moving parts needed to operate smoothly. Everything else was just details. He started by cleaning the broken connections using a small brush to remove dust and debris. The dragon made encouraging chirping sounds as it watched, clearly understanding that this was an important step. When Sam looked closely at the damaged circuits, he could see how they were supposed to connect. The patterns were elegant and logical, even if the technology was beyond his understanding. The real challenge came when Sam tried to figure out how to repair the broken pathways. His human electronics operated on different principles than Draknari technology. The voltages were wrong, the signal patterns did not match, and the materials were completely incompatible. By all logic, it should have been impossible to make them work together. But Sam had spent years making impossible repairs work. He had learned to improvise, to find creative solutions when standard approaches failed. Sometimes the best fix was not the most technically correct one, but the one that actually worked. He pulled out a roll of quantum tape from his toolkit. The stuff was expensive, but it could bond almost any two materials together at the molecular level. More importantly, it could conduct energy between incompatible systems, translating signals from one format to another. Sam had used it before to connect human equipment to alien power sources. Working carefully, Sam began bridging the broken circuits with thin strips of quantum tape. The dragon watched with fascination as he connected each pathway, its golden eyes following every movement. The little creature seemed to understand that something important was happening, even if it could not follow the technical details. The power distribution system was the most complex part of the repair. The toy's crystal core generated energy and pulses that followed a pattern Sam had never seen before. His instruments could measure the output, but he could not predict when the next pulse would come. The timing seemed almost random, yet the toy had worked perfectly before it was broken. Sam sat back and thought about the problem. Random was probably the wrong word. Just because he could not see the pattern did not mean there was not one. He watched the crystals pulsing for several minutes, trying to understand its rhythm. The dragon made soft cooing sounds as if encouraging him to keep trying. Slowly, Sam began to notice that the pulses were not random at all. They followed a complex pattern that repeated every few minutes. The timing was based on some kind of mathematical sequence that was beautiful in its complexity. Once he understood the pattern, he could predict when each pulse would occur. He modified his repair to work with the crystal's natural rhythm, using capacitors from his kit to store energy between pulses and release it at the right moments. It was not elegant, but it should work. The dragon seemed to sense that progress was being made, moving closer to watch as Sam made the final connections. When Sam activated the toy's power core, nothing happened at first. Then slowly the circuits began to glow. Light flowed along the repaired pathways like water finding its course, and the toy's various systems came online one by one. The wings unfolded smoothly, the engines hummed to life, and the navigation lights began to blink in sequence. The dragon hatchling squealed with delight as its toy rose into the air. The little spaceship moved with perfect grace, responding to the dragon's movements and sounds. When the hatchling clapped its claws together, the toy performed a barrel roll. When it made excited chirping sounds, the toy's lights flashed in response. Sam watched with satisfaction as the dragon played with its repaired toy. The repair had taken hours, but seeing the little creature's joy made every minute worthwhile. He had not just fixed a broken machine, he had restored something that brought happiness to a child. As he packed up his tools, Sam noticed that the toy was actually performing better than it had before. His improvised repairs had somehow improved its responsiveness and agility. The quantum tape bridges were translating signals more efficiently than the original circuits, and the modified power distribution system was providing steadier energy flow. The dragon seemed to notice the improvement too. It made a series of complex chirping sounds that Sam did not understand, but the tone was clearly grateful. The little creature flew its toy through increasingly elaborate maneuvers, testing its capabilities with the curiosity of youth. Sam smiled as he watched the display. He might not understand Draknari technology, but he understood the universal language of a child's laughter. Some things were the same across all species: the bond between a child and a beloved toy, the joy of play, and the satisfaction of fixing something that was broken. As he prepared to leave, the dragon made one final sound, a musical trill that seemed to express pure happiness. The toy responded by landing gently in the dragon's arms, its lights pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm like a contented heartbeat. Sam gave the little dragon a gentle wave goodbye and made his way back through the maintenance tunnels. Behind him, he could hear the soft sounds of play as the hatchling continued to enjoy its repaired toy. It had been a good day's work, the kind that reminded him why he loved fixing things. He never noticed that his every move had been watched by hidden eyes, or that the simple act of repairing a child's toy had impressed an observer whose opinion could reshape the destiny of entire worlds. Deep in the shadows of the maintenance corridor, a figure that could barely fit in the space watched the human mechanic depart. Emperor Valthros had ruled the Draknari Empire for 8 centuries, his crimson scales bearing the scars of countless battles, and his amber eyes holding the wisdom of ages. Never in all those years had he witnessed anything quite like what he had just observed. The Emperor's youngest son, Prince Kairos, sat contentedly with his repaired toy, completely unaware that his father had been searching for him for hours. The little dragon made happy chirping sounds as his toy spaceship performed loops in the air, its movements more graceful than they had ever been before. Valthros recognized the craftsmanship immediately. The toy had been made by Master Artificer Threnox, one of the finest engineers in the Empire. When the toy had been broken that morning, Threnox himself had examined the damage and declared it beyond repair. The crystalline matrix circuits were too delicate to rebuild, he had said. The quantum resonance chambers could not be recalibrated without specialized equipment worth more than most starships. The toy would need to be completely reconstructed from scratch, a process that would take months, yet here was a human being whose species had barely mastered interstellar travel, who had not only repaired the impossible damage but somehow improved upon the original design. The toy now moved with fluid grace that surpassed even Thrinox's masterful creation. Valthros moved closer, his massive form somehow silent despite his size. He had perfected the art of moving unseen over centuries of rule, learning that sometimes the most valuable intelligence came from observing without being observed. What he had witnessed tonight challenged everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. The human called Sam Williams had approached the situation with no thought of reward or recognition. When he saw a distressed child, he had simply acted to help, regardless of species or potential consequences. There had been no fear in his manner, no calculation of political advantage, just a being seeing another's distress and choosing to respond with kindness. But it was the technical achievement that truly stunned the Dragon Emperor. Valthros understood the toy's construction better than most. He had commissioned it personally as a gift for his son's hatching day. The device incorporated technologies that the Empire's best engineers had spent decades perfecting. The crystalline circuits required quantum-level precision to manufacture, and the power distribution system was based on mathematical principles that few minds could fully grasp. Sam Williams had rebuilt those systems using primitive human tools and improvised materials. By all the laws of physics and engineering, it should have been impossible. The technological gap between human and Draknari science was measured in millennia, not years. Yet somehow the human had bridged that gap through intuition and determination. Valthros thought back to the intelligence reports he had read about humanity. The species was young by galactic standards, having achieved spaceflight only a few centuries ago. Their technology was crude but functional, their military forces small but tenacious. Most galactic powers viewed humans as a minor player, useful for trade but not significant enough to warrant serious attention. Those reports had clearly missed something important. The Emperor watched his son play with the repaired toy, noting every improvement the human had made. The response time was faster, the movement more fluid, the energy efficiency significantly improved. Master Thrinox would be astounded when he saw the modifications. More importantly, Prince Kiros was happier with his toy than he had ever been before. Valthros began to piece together a new understanding of human capabilities. Their technology might be primitive, but their approach to problem-solving was unique. Where Draknari engineers relied on established principles and proven techniques, humans seemed to possess an intuitive grasp of how systems wanted to work. They found solutions through empathy rather than analysis, understanding machines as living entities, rather than mere collections of parts. It was a fundamentally different way of thinking about technology, one that might offer insights the Empire had never considered. For centuries, Draknari science had advanced through careful research and methodical improvement. Progress was steady but slow, limited by adherence to established doctrine. Perhaps what they needed was the fresh perspective that only an outsider could provide. The implications were staggering. If one human mechanic could achieve such results with basic tools and limited materials, what might be possible with proper resources and support? The Empire's technological advancement had plateaued in recent decades, but human innovation might provide the breakthrough they needed. More than that, the Emperor found himself impressed by the human's character. Sam Williams had acted without thought of personal gain, driven purely by compassion for a distressed child. In a galaxy filled with species motivated by power, wealth, or conquest, such selfless behavior was rare and precious. Valthros made a decision that would echo through history. Humanity deserved closer examination, and Sam Williams had earned the Dragon Emperor's personal attention. The mechanic's actions had revealed something profound about his species, a combination of technical intuition and moral character that could prove invaluable to the Empire. Prince Kiros looked up from his play and chirped a greeting to his father. The little dragon showed no surprise at finding the Emperor in the maintenance tunnel. At his age, the world was full of wonders, and having his father appear was just another marvelous occurrence. Valthros smiled and moved closer to his son, careful not to disturb the toy's flight pattern. The device performed a perfect spiral before landing gently in the prince's outstretched claws. Its lights pulsed in a steady rhythm that somehow conveyed contentment and peace. The Dragon Emperor picked up his son and examined the repaired toy more closely. Every modification Sam had made served a purpose, improving function while maintaining the device's essential character. The human had understood what the toy was meant to be and had enhanced those qualities rather than imposing his own vision. It spoke to a wisdom that transcended technical knowledge, the ability to see the true nature of things and to work in harmony with that nature, rather than against it. Such wisdom was rare in any species, but perhaps it was more common among humans than anyone had realized. As Valthros carried his son back toward the diplomatic quarters, he began formulating plans. Sam Williams would need to be studied, but carefully and respectfully. The human had earned that much through his kindness to Prince Kairos. More importantly, the Emperor needed to understand whether Sam's abilities were unique or representative of broader human potential. The future of both species might depend on the answer to that question. 3 days had passed since the toy repair, and Emperor Valthros found himself consumed with curiosity about the human mechanic. From his private quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Starfire's Crown, he had access to the most sophisticated intelligence network in known space. Within hours of beginning his investigation, detailed files on Sam Williams appeared on his personal display. The human had been born on New Dakota, a farming world on the edge of human space. His parents had been agricultural engineers who specialized in hydroponic systems for difficult environments. Sam had shown mechanical aptitude from an early age, often taking apart farm equipment just to see how it worked. His teachers noted that he seemed to understand machines intuitively, often solving problems that should have been beyond his knowledge level. At 18, Sam had enlisted in the Human Defense Corps, where his abilities had caught the attention of his superiors. His service record showed consistent excellence in maintaining and repairing military equipment under combat conditions. During the Outer Rim conflict, he had single-handedly kept a damaged destroyer operational for 3 weeks while under constant enemy fire, earning him the Silver Star for exceptional service. After his discharge, Sam had chosen not to pursue advanced technical training or lucrative corporate positions. Instead, he had become a wandering mechanic, moving from station to station and taking whatever repair work he could find. His reputation for fixing the impossible had spread slowly through the trading networks, but he seemed content to work in obscurity. The files painted a picture of someone driven more by curiosity and compassion than by ambition or wealth. Sam regularly donated his services to refugee ships and struggling traders, often accepting payment in meals rather than credits. He had no permanent address, no significant possessions beyond his tools, and no apparent desire for advancement or recognition. It was a lifestyle that puzzled Emperor Valthros. In Draknari society, individuals with exceptional abilities were identified early and guided toward positions where their talents could serve the Empire. The idea that someone with Sam's capabilities would choose to remain anonymous and itinerant was almost incomprehensible. But understanding Sam's background was only the first step. Valthros needed to see the human's abilities in action, to determine whether the toy repair had been a fluke or a demonstration of genuine skill. The Emperor had resources available that could provide such opportunities without revealing his interest. The next morning, Sam received an unusual job offer. A Draknari trader named Keleth approached him in the station's marketplace, explaining that his cargo hauler had developed a critical malfunction in its stasis systems. The ship was carrying a valuable shipment of rare crystals that would deteriorate rapidly without proper environmental controls. Standard repair procedures would take days, but Keleth had heard that Sam might be able to find a faster solution. What Keleth did not mention was that he was actually Commander Keleth of the Imperial Intelligence Service, and that the malfunction had been carefully engineered to test Sam's abilities. The stasis system failure was real enough, but it had been created using techniques that should make it impossible to repair without replacing the entire primary control matrix. Sam accepted the job and followed Keleth to his ship, a mid-sized cargo hauler that looked typical of the vessels used by independent traders. The stasis bay was impressive, filled with crystalline formations that pulsed with their own inner light. The environmental controls were clearly advanced technology, far beyond what most traders could afford. The malfunction was immediately apparent. The primary control matrix had suffered what appeared to be a cascade failure, with multiple systems going offline in sequence. Warning lights flashed throughout the bay, and temperature readings showed the crystals were already beginning to deteriorate. According to the ship's diagnostic systems, the estimated repair time was 72 hours minimum. Sam examined the damaged systems with his usual methodical approach, tracing power flows and testing circuit responses. Kelleth watched from a discreet distance, pretending to be anxious about his cargo while actually observing every detail of Sam's work. Hidden sensors throughout the bay recorded everything for later analysis. What Kelleth saw defied his expectations. Sam approached the alien technology with confidence, quickly identifying the root cause of the failure and developing a repair strategy. The human seemed to understand the system's underlying logic, despite having no prior experience with Draknari environmental controls. More impressive was Sam's diagnostic technique. Rather than relying purely on instruments, he seemed to listen to the machinery itself, placing his hands on different components and somehow sensing their condition. It was as if he could feel the flow of energy through the circuits and identify blockages or irregularities through touch alone. Sam began his repair by isolating the affected systems and rerouting power through backup circuits. The approach was unconventional but effective, bypassing the damaged components rather than attempting to repair them directly. He worked with quick efficiency, his hands moving confidently even when working with unfamiliar controls. The real test came when Sam encountered the quantum resonance chamber at the heart of the stasis system. The chamber had been deliberately sabotaged in a way that should make repair impossible without specialized equipment. The quantum field generators were out of alignment, their frequency patterns chaotic and unstable. Standard procedure would require recalibrating each generator individually, using precision instruments that cost more than most starships. The process was extremely complex, requiring extensive training and careful attention to detail. A single mistake could destroy the entire system. Sam studied the quantum chamber for several minutes, running his hands along its surface and listening to the chaotic harmonics it was producing. Then, to Kelleth's amazement, he began making adjustments by hand, turning calibration controls without instruments or measurements. Somehow, Sam could hear the proper frequency patterns in the chaos. He adjusted each generator until its output harmonized with the others, creating a stable quantum field through intuition rather than calculation. The process took less than an hour, compared to the days it should have required. When Sam powered up the repaired system, it performed better than the original specifications. The stasis field was more stable, the energy efficiency had improved, and the environmental controls responded more quickly to changing conditions. The crystals in storage immediately began recovering from their deterioration. Kelleth was genuinely impressed despite knowing the test was artificial. Sam had not just passed the challenge, he had exceeded it in ways that would astonish the Empire's best engineers. The human possessed an intuitive understanding of technology that transcended conventional knowledge. More than that, Sam had approached the entire situation with the same compassionate professionalism he had shown with the broken toy. He worked quickly because he understood that the crystals were important to Kelleth, not because he was trying to impress anyone. When the repair was complete, he explained what he had done in simple terms, making sure Kelleth understood how to maintain the improved system. As Sam packed up his tools and accepted payment for the job, Kelleth found himself genuinely liking the human. There was something refreshing about Sam's straightforward manner and obvious dedication to his craft. In a galaxy full of beings motivated by greed or ambition, Sam's simple desire to help others was almost shocking in its purity. When Sam left the ship, Kelleth immediately transmitted his report to Emperor Velthros. The conclusion was clear. Sam Williams possessed abilities that could revolutionize Draknari technology, combined with a character that made him worthy of trust and respect. The human was exactly what the Emperor had hoped to find, but one test, no matter how impressive, was not enough to base galactic policy upon. Velthros needed to understand the full scope of Sam's abilities, and more importantly, whether those abilities were unique or representative of broader human potential. The investigation would continue, but with greater urgency and higher stakes. Sam was calibrating a plasma conduit in his small workshop when the stranger approached him. The figure wore a hooded cloak that concealed most of their features, but Sam could see scales at their wrists and throat that marked them as Draknari. The being moved with quiet dignity, and when they spoke, their voice carried an accent that suggested high education and refined breeding. "You are Sam Williams, the mechanic," the stranger said. It was not a question. "I have heard stories of your work, and I have need of your particular talents." Sam set down his tools and wiped his hands on a rag. "Depends on what needs fixing. What can I do for you?" The stranger reached into their cloak and produced a credit chip that made Sam's eyes widen. The amount displayed was more than he usually earned in several months. "There is a ship in the outer docking ring that requires your attention. The work is delicate and time is of great importance." Sam studied the stranger's hidden face, trying to read their intentions. Something about the situation felt unusual, but the credits were real enough and someone clearly needed help. "What kind of ship? What's the problem?" "A family vessel," the stranger replied. "The medical bay has suffered a critical malfunction. A loved one lies in stasis, and the pod's failure means certain death without immediate repair. I have been told that you might accomplish what others cannot." The mention of someone's life hanging in the balance decided Sam immediately. He gathered his tools and followed the stranger through the station's corridors toward the outer ring. The docking area was quieter here, used mainly by private vessels and diplomatic ships rather than commercial traffic. The ship they approached was clearly of Draknari construction. Its elegant lines and subtle design flourishes marking it as a vessel built for comfort rather than utility. Sam had worked on similar ships before, though never one quite so luxurious. The stranger led him aboard through an airlock that opened silently at their approach. Inside, the ship was even more impressive. Soft lighting illuminated corridors lined with what appeared to be genuine artwork, and the air carried a faint scent of exotic flowers. This was definitely not a typical trader's vessel. Someone with serious wealth and refined taste owned this ship. The medical bay was located near the ship's center, its entrance marked by symbols that Sam assumed were Draknari characters. The stranger gestured for him to enter, then stepped back respectfully. "I will leave you to your work. Time is precious." Sam entered the medical bay and immediately saw the problem. A stasis pod dominated the center of the room, its crystalline surface dark and its control systems flashing warning signals. The pod was a work of art as much as a medical device, with flowing curves and intricate patterns etched into its surface. But beauty meant nothing if it could not perform its function. The diagnostic display showed cascade failure throughout the quantum field generators. Exactly the kind of malfunction that required weeks of careful work to repair properly. Sam had seen similar damage before, though never in equipment quite so advanced. The pod systems were at least a generation ahead of anything he had worked on previously. He set up his portable workstation and began examining the damaged systems. The pod's construction was magnificent. Every component was crafted with precision that bordered on perfection. The quantum field generators were works of art in themselves, their crystalline matrices forming patterns of impossible complexity and beauty. But something was wrong beyond the obvious malfunction. The damage patterns were too uniform, too systematic. Sam had seen enough equipment failures to recognize the difference between accident and sabotage. This pod had been deliberately damaged, though so skillfully that it would take an expert to recognize the fact. Sam paused, considering the implications. Someone had hired him to repair equipment that had been intentionally broken. The most likely explanation was that this was some kind of test, though he could not imagine who would go to such elaborate lengths to evaluate a simple mechanic. For a moment, he considered confronting his mysterious employer about the deception. But then he remembered what the stranger had said about time being precious and a life hanging in the balance. Even if the current emergency was artificial, someday this pod might be needed to save someone real. Better to repair it properly and ensure it would work when the need arose. Sam began the delicate process of realigning the quantum field generators. The work required absolute precision. Even tiny errors could destabilize the entire system. Normally, such repairs would require specialized equipment worth more than most starships. Sam had to improvise using his portable tools and whatever materials he could salvage from the ship's maintenance supplies. The quantum matrices were particularly challenging to work with. They responded to emotional state as much as technical skill, requiring a calm and focused mind to achieve proper alignment. Sam found himself entering an almost meditative state as he worked, his consciousness extending into the crystalline structures to sense their quantum harmonics directly. Hours passed unnoticed as Sam lost himself in the repair. The damaged systems gradually responded to his touch, their chaotic energy patterns slowly resolving into stable configurations. He worked by intuition as much as knowledge, feeling his way through problems that should have required detailed analysis and calculation. The most complex part of the repair involved recalibrating the temporal stabilizers that maintained the stasis field's integrity. The mathematics involved were beyond Sam's formal education, but somehow he could sense the correct adjustments needed. It was as if the machine itself was guiding his hands, showing him what needed to be done. When Sam finally activated the completed repair, the stasis pod hummed to life with perfect efficiency. Its control displays showed optimal function across all systems, and the quantum field generators produced harmonics of crystalline clarity. The pod was not just repaired, it was performing better than original specifications. Sam stepped back and admired his work with satisfaction. The repair had taken most of the night, but the result was worth the effort. Whoever eventually used this pod would benefit from improvements in stability, efficiency, and response time that the original designers had never imagined. It was only then that Sam noticed the pod was empty. There was no patient inside, no life hanging in the balance. The entire emergency had been fabricated. He had been hired to repair equipment that had been deliberately broken, for reasons he could not fathom. A lesser person might have felt deceived or angry about the wasted effort. But Sam found himself smiling instead. The repair had been excellent practice, and now there was a perfectly functioning stasis pod ready for use when someone really needed it. Besides, the credits were real enough, and he had enjoyed the technical challenge. Sam packed up his tools and prepared to leave, but found his path blocked by a massive figure that seemed to fill the medical bay's entrance. The being was clearly Draknari, but larger and more imposing than any Sam had encountered before. Crimson scales caught the light like polished armor, and ancient amber eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of experience and authority. "I am Emperor Valthros of the Draknari Empire," the dragon said, his voice carrying unmistakable power and dignity. "And you, Sam Williams, have given me cause to reconsider everything I believed about humanity." Sam's mouth went dry, but his hands remained steady as he continued packing his tools. He was in the presence of the most powerful being in known space, but somehow that seemed less important than finishing his work properly. "Just completing the calibrations, Your Majesty. Should be good as new." The Dragon Emperor's laughter rumbled like distant thunder, filled with genuine amusement and something that might have been respect. Here was a human who, upon meeting the ruler of half the galaxy, was more concerned with completing his work than with protocol or fear. It was exactly the response Valthros had hoped to see, and it confirmed everything he had begun to believe about Sam Williams and perhaps humanity as a whole. The silence in the medical bay stretched for several heartbeats as Sam finished securing his tools. Emperor Valthros watched with fascination as the human completed his work with the same methodical care he had shown throughout the repair, seemingly unbothered by the presence of the most powerful ruler in known space. 3 weeks ago, the Dragon Emperor said finally, "You repaired my son's toy in a maintenance tunnel on Harmony's rest station. You did so without thought of reward, without knowledge of who he was, simply because a child was distressed." Sam straightened and looked directly at the massive dragon, showing no fear despite the obvious power difference between them. "Your son's toy was a beautiful piece of work, Your Majesty. Whoever crafted it has incredible talent." Valthros moved closer, his enormous form somehow managing to convey curiosity rather than menace. "It was created by Master Artificer Thrinox, widely considered the finest engineer in my empire. He spent months perfecting every detail, incorporating techniques refined over centuries of advancement. When it was broken, he examined the damage and declared it irreparable." The Emperor gestured toward the stasis pod with one clawed hand. "Yet you not only fixed it using primitive tools and salvaged materials, you improved upon his masterwork. The toy now performs better than its original design specifications." Sam considered this information carefully. Sometimes the best solution is not the most complex one. Every machine wants to work properly. It just needs someone to understand what's wrong and care enough to fix it right. Care enough. Valthros repeated thoughtfully. Yes, I believe that may be the key difference. Tell me, Sam Williams, what do you see when you look at a broken machine? The question seemed strange, but Sam answered honestly. I see something that was meant to bring joy or serve a purpose, but can't, because something is preventing it from working properly. Usually, the machine itself knows what's wrong. You just have to listen carefully enough to understand what it's trying to tell you. The Dragon Emperor nodded slowly. And when you repaired the stasis pod tonight, knowing it was empty, knowing there was no genuine emergency, what motivated you to continue? Sam shrugged. Someone built this pod to save lives. Just because it's not needed right now does not mean it won't be needed later. Better to have it working perfectly when that time comes. Even though you knew you had been deceived about the urgency? Everyone has their reasons for doing things, Sam replied. Maybe you needed to know if I could handle the repair. Maybe this was a test of some kind. Does not really matter to me. The pod needed fixing and now it works better than before. Valthros studied the human with growing amazement. Here was a being who possessed not only remarkable technical abilities, but a philosophy that transcended mere craftsmanship. Sam Williams approached every repair not as a job, but as an opportunity to restore something to its proper function, regardless of personal gain or recognition. You are correct that this was a test, the Emperor admitted, though perhaps not in the way you imagine. I have been observing your work, trying to understand how a member of such a young species could accomplish feats that challenge our greatest engineers. The dragon moved closer to the stasis pod, examining Sam's modifications with expert eyes. This repair should have taken weeks using conventional methods. You completed it in hours, and the improvements you made will advance our medical technology by decades. How? Sam thought about the question seriously before answering. I grew up on a farm world where nothing worked quite right, and everything had to be fixed with whatever materials you could find. You learned to see past the surface differences to the underlying principles that make things work. A Dreknari stasis pod might use more advanced materials than a human medical scanner. But they're both trying to maintain stable conditions for biological systems. You see patterns that others miss, Valthros observed. Maybe. Or maybe I just listen more carefully to what the machines are trying to tell me. Sam gestured toward the stasis pod. This one was practically screaming about quantum field instabilities in the temporal stabilizers. Once you understand what's wrong, finding a solution is just a matter of creativity and patience. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications of what he was hearing. Sam Williams, I want to share something with you that will change your understanding of why this conversation matters. For the past 3 weeks, I have been studying not just you, but your entire species. Sam raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting for the explanation. Humanity is viewed by most galactic powers as a minor player. Valthros continued. Your technology is primitive, your military forces small, your political influence limited. The prevailing wisdom is that humans are useful for trade but not significant enough to warrant serious attention. The dragon's amber eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement. That assessment is catastrophically wrong. What I have observed in you, and what my subsequent research suggests about your species as a whole, indicates that humanity possesses capabilities that could revolutionize galactic civilization. Sam frowned. I'm just one guy with a toolbox, Your Majesty. I would not read too much into what I can do. One mechanic who can repair the irreparable, Valthros countered. One individual who approaches every problem with empathy and determination, who sees possibilities where others see only obstacles. If such abilities are even remotely common among humans, the implications are staggering. The Emperor moved to look out the medical bay's viewport, where stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. My empire has grown powerful through military might and technological superiority. But growth has slowed in recent centuries. Our advancement has plateaued because we have become too rigid in our thinking, too dependent on established methods. He turned back to Sam. What you represent is a different approach entirely. Where we see complex problems requiring complex solutions, you see simple principles that need creative application. Where we rely on specialized knowledge and expensive equipment, you use intuition and improvised materials. You succeed not despite your limitations, but because of them. Sam was beginning to understand the magnitude of what the Emperor was suggesting. You think other humans might have similar abilities? I believe humanity as a whole possesses a form of practical wisdom that my empire desperately needs, Valthros replied. Your species has learned to adapt and improvise out of necessity. Those skills, combined with our resources and knowledge, could usher in a new golden age of discovery and advancement. The Dragon Emperor drew himself up to his full impressive height. Sam Williams, I hereby extend to you and your species an invitation to full partnership within the Draknari Empire. Not as subjects or junior allies, but as equal partners in shaping the future of galactic civilization. Sam blinked, the enormity of the offer slowly sinking in. That's incredibly generous, Your Majesty, though I should probably mention that I'm not exactly an official representative of humanity. You might want to talk to someone with more authority about representing our species. The rumbling laughter that filled the medical bay was warm with genuine amusement. Indeed I shall. But it was a simple human mechanic who showed me that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to repair and improve. Velthros moved toward the exit, then paused. My son has been asking about you constantly since you fixed his toy. He has become quite the little engineer himself, inspired by what you showed him about how machines work. Perhaps you would visit with him again before you leave the station? I'd like that, Sam replied with a smile. He's a bright kid. With the right encouragement, he could probably build toys better than the one I repaired. As the Dragon Emperor departed, Sam stood alone in the medical bay, tools in hand, trying to process how fixing a child's toy had somehow changed the course of galactic history. Through the viewport, stars continued their eternal dance. But everything felt different now, as if the universe itself had shifted to accommodate new possibilities. Somewhere in the distance, he could swear he heard the happy trill of a young dragon, playing with a perfectly functioning toy and dreaming of the wonders he might create when he grew up.